This is Optimal Finance Daily, episode 2128, Bankroll versus Bankrolled by Helene Massicotte of freetopursue.com. And I'm your host and personal finance enthusiast, Diana Merriam. Now let's get right to it as we optimize your life. Bankroll versus Bankrolled by Helene Massicotte of freetopursue.com. We live in a debt culture. The majority of us have debt of some kind, be it a mortgage, student loans, a car loan, a line of credit, carrying a balance on our store cards, a government-endorsed loan against retirement savings, a buy now, pay later purchase, a payday loan, a pay advance, a debt owing to a bookie or dealer, or a mix of the previously mentioned. While many would argue that the seriousness of the various types of debt varies from good debt to avoid at all cost, I would argue that the fundamentals of how they affect our behavior and how we feel are generally the same, though I'll admit the last few on the list may seem a little extreme. The problem with how we think about debt stems from the common sense statements we often hear when it comes to 1. Business assets. Leasing is cheaper than buying because it's tax deductible. 2, school. It's an investment in your future and you need to go to the best school you can get into. 3, investments, such as starting or expanding a business or buying stock. You can use other people's money and only have to pay the interest, and that means that the return on your own money is significantly greater when you're leveraged. 4, buying a home. It's better than renting, and you should get as big of a house as you can afford because it's an investment, and in the US at least, the interest can be tax deductible. 5, love. You need to get that bling on her finger, no matter what. 6, work. Everyone needs a reliable car to get to work. A car payment's just like any other monthly bill. 7, social status. It's rude not to have a big fancy wedding because your friends and family have to celebrate with you in style. And 8, fun. FOMO or YOLO, life is too short after all. As a society, we've become experts at rationalizing and normalizing debt. We've become so good at it that it's hard to believe that for the most part, all of these financing options weren't around before the boomer generation. In fact, most of these appeared after the 1970s. And we're worse off for it. It's time to relearn what those born before World War II know. Though they might sound good, these common sense statements ignore the human factor. We're not machines. We have feelings, and these can include worry, apprehension, anxiety, depression, panic, nervousness, and restlessness. Conversely, we can also experience calmness, contentment, satisfaction, gratitude, pleasure, and peace of mind. No marketer or banker will ever tell you about the advantages of bankrolling yourself instead of letting them do it for you. Instead, they emphasize that you shouldn't have to wait. You shouldn't have to miss opportunities. You deserve it. You should feel good now. The reality is that nothing feels better than owning something outright. Nothing feels better than having had to work for something before getting it. Every time we use something we don't really own, thanks to other people's money, it's a slight letdown. We may not feel it at first, but once that new car smell is gone, or once we've broken in that new pair of designer shoes, belongings that are not truly ours serve as a constant reminder that we owe someone money, that we're not truly free. They can make us feel we're handcuffed to a job we don't like, a business we're not passionate about anymore, a degree we know isn't right for us anymore, and possibly even to a relationship we no longer want to be in. But hey, at least we look good, right? We look like we have it all together. We look happy. When we own what we have and use regularly, we feel different, better. We may not have the newest, nicest, best, or most of everything, but when we know it's ours, truly ours, it all looks and more importantly feels just so much better. Money, ours and theirs, is all about control. The ultimate question then is, who do we want in the driver's seat? I'd argue that the freedom that comes from bankrolling ourselves leads to a richer and more satisfying life. And that, to me at least, is worth a little patience and some delayed gratification. You just listened to the post titled Bankroll versus Bankrolled by Helene Massicotte of freetopursue.com. In general, I really try to avoid taking on debt, but I also recognize that there are strategic ways to use debt when building wealth. For example, taking on student loan debt for your education could make sense if you have confidence that the earning potential of your career will provide a good return on investment. Same thing with mortgage debt for real estate investors. One of my good friends is an investor with $1 million of mortgage debt, but the rental income she's collecting more than justifies it. I think the exception is credit card debt. I learned the hard way that credit card debt should be avoided like the plague. The point is, when taking on debt, I think it's important to be strategic. I'll give you an example. I had a good experience in leveraging low interest debt when I bought my house. I had the 20% down payment, but it was pretty much all the cash I had on hand, and I didn't want to part with all of it for obvious reasons. So what I ended up doing was finding a bank that let me pay half my down payment with a HELOC or home equity line of credit. And I did the math to see how fast I could pay that off and how much I would pay in interest. I ended up paying that off in 6 months, and I only paid around $200 in interest. It was totally worth it for the peace of mind. So that being said, all debt isn't horrible as long as you have a plan for repayment and you understand the impact of interest. That's a wrap for another Friday show. Have a great start to your weekend, and I'll be back tomorrow where your optimal life awaits.